I would like to invite our very first official speaker, Miss Angela Rolfe. Miss Rolfe is an architect from Ireland, and she is very passionate about the conservation of heritage and culture. She is also the regional director of the Architecture for All Work program, and she will talk today about the international context for inclusion and accessibility in the historical buildings. Ms. Rolfe is the driving force behind the International Council on Monuments and Sites in Ireland, and during her presentation she will zoom in on the role of the working group on common dignity and rights-based approaches. Ms. Rolfe, the stage is yours.
Goedemorgen. Er werd mij gevraagd om een perspectief te geven rond toegankelijkheid en cultureel erfgoed vanuit een internationaal perspectief. Gezien mijn achtergrond zal ik meteen naar de presentatie gaan, want ik heb namelijk niet veel tijd. Ja, waar moet ik op drukken? Prima. Mijn presentatie zal het volgende onderlijnen. De internationale objectieven van het AII, van architecten. We gaan ook een Ierse case study aan u voorstellen. Het werkprogramma van architecten is een internationaal werkprogramma dat zich met name bezighoudt om een inclusief en toegankelijke omgeving te bouwen. Het heeft zowat 60 leden van 40 landen wereldwijd. 9 van ons hadden hier ook een persoonlijke ontmoeting in het provinciaal gebouw. Fantastisch was het gisteren. Het doel van het programma is als volgt. Het wil het volgende promoten. Het sociaal verantwoordelijke omgevingen wil het gaan ondersteunen, onafhankelijk van leeftijd, geslacht, handicap, sociale of andere beperkingen of achtergronden. Het wil een architectuur voor iedereen, wil participatoire processen voor gebruikers in de creatie van de gebruikers gaan bouwen. De levenskwaliteit is hierin heel belangrijk en daarin is ook gelijkheid en inclusie heel belangrijk voor ons. De Architecten voor Allen heeft 4 strategische objectieven. Ik ga deze voor u even samenvatten. Wij willen voor een beleids
the promotion of best practices, community engagement and
de recente publicaties kunt u op de website downloaden van de UAI. Deze zijn ook in 2019 door
Social Reality in America, that's published in English and Spanish, and the AfA Inclusive Design Guidelines Response to Disasters, Part 1 and 2, which were updated last year. In 2019, the Architecture for All Work program presented a small exhibition at the UIA International Forum in Baku on mass tourism in historic cities, making the case that inclusive heritage can equal sustainable tourism. Our villa is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Its medieval defensive walls are well preserved, and they've been carefully adapted to improve access and develop sustainable tourism without undermining their cultural heritage. And the other image of Palace of Versailles, also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is now suffering from probably over-tourism. It has over 10 million visitors per annum. But a program of restoration and upgrading works were carried out between 2003 and 2020 to ensure physical and interpretive access for all. Both these sites were visited by Architecture for All Work program members and studied. The Architecture for All Work programme organises the UIA Friendly and Inclusive Spaces Awards every 3 years. These awards were established to promote aspiring buildings and sites that have created socially sustainable environments through high-quality architectural design. There are 4 award categories, one of which is existing in historic buildings. Entries are evaluated on the overall quality of design and how the project has addressed accessibility and inclusive design, and whether the quality of architecture takes account of human diversity and needs, enhances user experience through the use of friendly scale, form, color, material, and light, and whether it facilitates orientation, navigation, wayfinding, ease of understanding, and cultural safety. Some of the criticisms that our previous speaker has experienced. The winner of the 2023 Friendly and Inclusive Spaces Award Medal for Excellence in Existing and Historic Buildings category was St Paul's Cathedral Equal Access Project in London, the architect Caro Architecture. This project introduces a new step-free entrance and was the most substantial external alteration to Christopher Wren's 1711 cathedral. The process of research, consultation, prototypes, design, and construction took more than 20 years. The existing steps to the north transept have been surmounted by a new structure, 2 sinusoid, if that's the right pronunciation, ramps on either side of a central staircase to provide a dignified, accessible entrance. Internally, a new, finely crafted timber portico provides welcome, orientation, and environmental control. This project provides the dignity of equal access with thoughtful and beautiful detailed design, enhancing the historic cathedral. And the citation for this award states, "This new ramp and entrance portico to the north transept of St Paul's Cathedral was deemed to be one of the best examples of interventions in an historic building. Whilst quite a radical and contemporary intervention into an important historic building, the new elements, through carefully crafted and considered detail, sit quietly and seamlessly enhance the user experience and inclusivity." This project is a therapeutic equine centre in Porto, which is the reconversion and extension of an ancient rural complex, won an honourable mention in last year. The sensitive intervention of contemporary architecture into the historic setting, together with the careful restoration of traditional buildings, provide an appropriate setting for a therapeutic pony club. Therapeutic riding benefiting individuals with a wide range of cognitive, physical, emotional, and social challenges. And this project demonstrates the importance of urban regeneration as a catalyst for community development and social inclusions by converting a ruined rural complex into a therapeutic equine centre. This project, again in Portugal, provides mechanical access to Leiria Castle, won an honourable mention in the open and public spaces category. The mechanical access to the castle was included in the city's plan for sustainable urban mobility and forms part of a strategic tool to implement the rehabilitation and regeneration of the city of Leiria, providing improved public realm for all residents and visitors alike. 2 alternative access routes to the castle, comprising lifts and a funicular, have been sensitively installed into the historic town, which improve the accessibility of the castle and the old town for all. And now I'll move to ICOMOS. For those who aren't aware, ICOMOS is an international non-governmental multidisciplinary organisation dedicated to the conservation and protection of cultural heritage. ICOMOS members advance restoration techniques and develop standards for immovable cultural heritage properties, buildings, historic towns, historic gardens, cultural landscapes, and archaeological sites. More recently, the cultural heritage has taken on a much broader remit in terms of communities. A report from an advisory body led by ICOMOS Norway, entitled Our Common Dignity Initiative on Rights-Based Approaches to World Heritage, Taking Stock and Looking Forward, was published in 2017. It deals with the rights-based approaches in World Heritage management. The UN Universal Declaration on Human Rights is the first pillar that informs our Common Dignity Initiative. ICOMOS are the expert advisors to UNESCO World Heritage. So they have taken this important initiatives over the last decade to respect, protect, and fulfill the rights to culture for individuals and communities by including rights-based approaches in its work through its ethical principles and Our Common Dignity Initiative. Furthermore, ICOMOS issued the Buenos Aires Declaration in 2018 to mark the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It was informed by our Common Dignity Initiative on rights-based approaches to World Heritage. And it states that ICOMOS supports the right to enjoy and partake of cultural heritage and reiterates its commitment to supporting rights-based approaches to World Heritage, and undertakes to build strong relationships with communities and peoples in their work, embrace the principle of free, prior-informed consent of source communities before adopting measures concerning their specific cultural heritage, offer all possible assistance so that communities and rights-based holders are consulted and invited to participate in the whole process of identification, actively, selection, classification, interpretation, preservation, and safeguarding of, as well as the stewardship of and the development of cultural heritage. And I'll now move to an Irish case study, which may be of some interest. I'm afraid it's a bit old because I retired from full-time employment some years ago. But I was responsible for the access programme for Áras an Uachtaráin, which is the House of the President of Ireland, over a 12-year period from 2004 to 2016. The clear direction from the then president was that all her guests should have equal access to the first house of the nation. Firstly, an access audit was carried out of all areas and gardens that had public access. This was translated into an access action plan, which prioritized issues of greatest concern, and a phased program of access upgrading projects was approved. It was important that the function of the President's office, its diplomatic, national, social events, and receptions were not disrupted during the process. Access works included the insertion of lift, accessible toilets, widening doorways, entrances, external ramps, steps, and handrails, compacting gravel paths. There were annual presidential garden parties, which required, so the gardens were an important element of the work. When most of the phases were complete, the President McAleese, who had initiated this work, invited representatives and advocates of the disability and inclusion community to road test the facilities. And I have to say, as an architect with a very small team who was responsible, it was, without being identified, being a fly on the wall, watching people with a range of disabilities and their carers negotiate, and some very pleasant responses and a few criticisms. It was quite interesting and challenging. Subsequently, an office beside the lift was converted into a changing place. As Ars Neutron dates back to the 1750s and is in a protected structure under Irish planning law, it was therefore very important that the integrity of the historic fabric of the building was not undermined by the access upgrading works. There were objections to access to these works from the City Council Conservation Department. So we produced a very clear, concise statement which set out the very delicate balance between conservation principles while at the same time aiming to honour the principles of universal accessibility, and demonstrated that we would not be embarrassing the office of the President by proceeding with the works. So this diagram shows the balance, and I've just included some of the main conservation principles of reversibility, minimum intervention, and ease of identification, with principles of universal accessibility, equity, and integrated independent access, use, and egress. And we were also able to refer to the Irish National Disability Authority Code of Practice on Accessible Heritage Site, which provides practical advice and explains the obligations of public bodies to ensure, with the proviso as far as practical, which, as you can imagine, can be interpreted in many ways, that the whole or part of a heritage site in its ownership, management, or control to which the public has access is accessible to people with disabilities and can be visited by them with ease and dignity. I hope that my presentation has given you a brief overview of the work of the UIA Architecture for All Work programme, the role of ICOMOS, particularly in relation to World Heritage Sites, and that the Irish case study was of interest and demonstrates the need for a champion. The St. Paul's Cathedral project shows that it takes time and persistence to develop bespoke solutions that optimize access and inclusion and equality without undermining the historic fabric of our shared cultural heritage. Thank you. Oops.